Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. My goodness, every day has a new twist and turn, doesn't it? I actually put my thoughts out there when I did the Mindspeak session in October regarding the likelihood of President Trump. And I said the prediction markets were underestimating his chances, which subsequently turned out to be right. And if you take a look at this 4-minute clip, it's on Rich Wrap-Up, it's on the front of rich.co.ke. Sort of puts my thoughts into perspective. A couple of days ago, I interviewed the inestimable and totemic Dr.Manu Chandaria. He's about 87 years old. If I'm not mistaken, he's the chairman and CEO of Comcraft Group of Companies. And in this interview, he was talking about the Latin America, Caribbean, Africa trading opportunity. And this is to do with the LAC Africa Summit being held later this month. Take a look at that interview. It's pretty interesting. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story. We were at a Johnny Walker night one night a couple of years ago with Charles Island, and we were sitting on the main table. And Dr. Chandaria doesn't drink, and of course there are these marvellous whiskies turning up, and it started off with the red label and the black label and the blue label, their very finest whiskies, and he kept telling the waiter just, fill it up, and he wasn't drinking, and then he turned to me and he said, Ali Khan, I went to university in the States, and I got a taste for, I think it was bourbon. And such a taste that they recalled him home, and he subsequently never drank. And that night, I have to say, we were chatting away, and all of a sudden he starts, without thinking, to drink. And by the end of it, he was quite pleasantly flush, and he's pretty diminutive, and he left for the evening, and his wife, who was even smaller, was really trying to keep up. It was quite an entertaining evening, I must say. But I digressed. Macro thoughts. Wednesday saw the biggest single-day move up in US 10-year yields in 3 years. This chart shows the daily moves in basis points over the last half-decade. Goes back to my piece, Mirrors on the Ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. And, I was saying, and she said, we are all just prisoners here of our own device. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax, said the night man. We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. What is clear, I said then, is that we're at the fag end of this party. US 10-year yields have experienced a wild ride, plunged to 1.7% at one point, and then rose afterwards to 2.1%. As investors feared a deficit-funded fiscal spending splurge. Mad world, S&P has experienced tremendous swing since election results began crossing tape. Future collapsed to 2028 and then rebounded to 2167. Home thoughts. I like this photograph from Truth Slinger. Some tranquility on a Sunday afternoon. Lake Magadi, it is a most beautiful situation down there, really is. In the early morning, Hannah and I discussed the world. She has become just so engaged, and this morning was asking me about how the Electoral College works. Then she said, did you make any money, Dad, on Trump? Because we've been discussing the prediction markets and how Trump was a rank 4-1 outsider. I tell myself I'm teaching her maths and not speculation, just a few hours before the final result, and I'd been predicting Trump was going to win. Really interesting conversations I'm having, it's just unbelievable. I'll put up a photograph of her in the pool, which is at Barana Ranch, and it's just under 2,000 meters and pretty cold. Political reflections. Let's start with the President-elect Donald Trump. He won this, all ends up. It really is an extraordinary triumph, and yesterday's quite gracious speech might be signalling a pivot. I expected him to pivot a little earlier. Nevertheless, he has made a lot of promises, and the open question is how many of those promises he will fulfill. and which ones, because on a continuum there are some serious outlier promises. And I tweeted, was that more inclusive speech by President-elect Trump the long-awaited Trump pivot? Carl Icahn and the markets thought so, because the moment they started to hear it, they started buying it up. Icahn apparently walked out of a victory party and bought $1 billion of stock. Volatile like Trump, S&P witnessed tremendous swings, ends 1.1% higher, 6.5% off the low, while the fear index, the VIX, crashed 23%. Eurasia Group's Ian Bremmer calls the Trump victory the most profound domestic political transition of my lifetime. He says a Trump presidency means the most significant hit to American power and leadership globally than any other event since the collapse of the Soviet Union. There are three aspects of American leadership that will be affected by the Trump administration and the growing geopolitical recession: the United States' role as a world policeman, architect of global trade, and cheerleader of global values. I would sell that. I think that's a bit of an extreme position. There are certainly challenges, but I think Trump will prove more pragmatic. Some of his campaign language would suggest. And it was, when I said it was a triumph, it was, because the Republicans now control the Senate, the House, the majority of governors, the Supreme Court pick, and the presidency, which is the first time since 1928. Again, returning to Eurasia Group here, who will win and lose under President Trump, giving you a sort of cheat sheet. WikiLeaks, quotes the New York Times, how our forecasts have changed. None of the media, which is in an echo chamber, saw this coming. On August 2016, I was on NTV and I said Donald Trump has a chance if he gets his demographics out. I am not writing him off. And I said on the 19th of September, if Trump can turn on and turn out his base and Hillary Clinton can't, then this is a toss-up. Forgotten white vote powers Trump to victory, says the FT. New York businessman was proved right on Tuesday as he rode a wave of anger with economic change, dog whistle racial politics, and pledges to crack down on immigration and rip up trade agreements to a stunning upset win. One demographic above all took him there, the once solidly democratic blue-collar white voters that may now be known as Trump Democrats. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer, the New York businessman declared in his victory speech. According to exit polls across the US, Mr. Trump carried the white voters who made up 70% of the electorate by a 58-37 margin over Hillary Clinton. He crushed. Among white voters without a university degree, that margin grew to 67-28. But even among those with a degree, exit polls showed him carrying the day 49-45. Despite surveys that for months had predicted there would be part of a demographic firewall benefiting Mrs. Clinton. Tuesday's scream of the angry white voter was heard loudest in Rust Belt states such as Ohio and Indiana, and threw into play previous Democratic strongholds such as Michigan and Pennsylvania, neither of which have voted for a Republican presidential nominee since 1988. The campaign and his appeal to white voters had an ugly side, unleashing a previously unseen level of vitriol in American politics, with his calls to prosecute his Democratic rival, provoking chants of "lock her up" at his rallies. He was also criticized widely for courting the vote of white nationalists and the alt-right movement that has taken anti-Semitic and racial bullying to new levels on social media. 19th of September, I asked where will the world be in the event of President Trump, who really knows or who can predict that? And I was saying then that Trump was a trading buy. And then I'm asking, where does the wave go next, post-Brexit, Farage, and election day? I think it comes to France. I think that's the point. Marine Le Pen leaps over the top in France. Matteo Renzi is playing Russian roulette with his referendum. This is a massive political populist zeitgeist of the 21st century. Put up a photograph of Marine Le Pen has been celebrating, obviously. And I think putting the adversarial, hardcore, linguistic, anti-other genie back in the bottle does not look likely. President Donald Trump wins. Noam Chomsky called this political moment 6 years ago. He warned of the success of a charismatic figure would have if one ran for office promising to cure society's ills. The United States is extremely lucky, he said, that no honest charismatic figure has arisen. Every charismatic figure is such an obvious crook that he destroys himself, like McCarthy or Nixon, or the evangelist preachers. If somebody comes along who is charismatic and honest, this country is in real trouble because of the frustration, disillusionment, the justified anger, and the absence of any coherent response. What are people supposed to think if someone says, I have got an answer, we have an enemy? There it was, the Jews, here it will be the illegal immigrants and the blacks. We will be told that white males are a persecuted minority. We will be told we have to defend ourselves in the honor of the nation. Military force will be exalted. People will be beaten up. This could become an overwhelming force. And if it happens, it will be more dangerous than Germany. The United States is the world power. And Germany was powerful, but had more powerful antagonists. I don't think all this is very far away. If the polls are accurate, it is not the Republicans, but the right-wing Republicans, the crazed Republicans, who will sweep the next election. Chomsky added that he had never seen anything like this in my lifetime, and I'm old enough to remember the 1930s, he said. The mood of the country is frightening. The level of anger, frustration, and hatred of institutions is not organized in a constructive way. It is going off into self-destructive fantasies. Well, my conclusion is that Chomsky was actually predated by Zbigniew Brzezinski, who said, in the technotronic society, the trend would seem to be towards the aggregation of the individual support of millions of uncoordinated citizens, easily within the reach of magnetic and attractive personalities, exploiting the latest communications techniques to manipulate emotions and control reason. Hillary Clinton's scripture tells us, let us not grow weary doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. I concluded by saying it's Shakespearean to have been so close to the heartbeat of power for so long, and then to see it slip through your fingers. And I like this quote, to all the little girls watching, never doubt that you are valuable and powerful and are deserving of every chance and opportunity in the world, of course. Chancellor Merkel, in my opinion, who wrote a very interesting and subtle congratulatory note to Donald Trump. I think she needs to focus on her home game, because that tsunami that begat Brexit, Donald Trump, might just arrive in Deutschland. Fast forward to Donald Trump's win, and the revolution continues. Nigel Farage, acting Independence Party leader and an architect of the Brexit vote, said in a phone interview. Two massive upsets in 2016, their unholy alliance of big business, big banks, and big politics is, I believe, coming to an end. Comic-turned-politician Beppe Grillo, co-founder of 5 Star, said the Trump win was incredible in his online blog. This is the deflagration of an epoch. It's the apocalypse of this information system, of the TVs, of the big newspapers, of the intellectuals, of the journalists. 5 Star, which already runs cities including Rome and Turin, calls for a referendum on Italy's membership of the Euro area. And clearly, I think Europe is firmly in the crosshairs now. Let me put up one final photograph of Trump and move on to the currency markets. The euro, which got as high as 113, is at 109.27. Dollar index 98.46. Japanese yen 105.55. Swissy 0.9833. The pound 124.44. The Aussie 0.7703. We really had some big moves in the FX markets. India rupee 66.425. South Korean won 1150.62. The Rial 323.51. Egyptian pound on a collapse 17.70. 17.07. South African rand 13.43. Dollar index, I'll put a 5-day chart so you can get a sense of how much movement we've seen. Dollar yen rallied sharply yesterday and then sold off again. We're now back at 105.58. Commodity markets, have a look at this from David Inglis. Commodities on China's exchanges since October 1. Coal up 57%, iron ore up 41%, steel up 30%, copper up 16.5%, nickel 16%, rubber 14.7%, aluminium 12.1%. Gold, last trading at 1288. It hasn't been able to hurdle. Well, it did hurdle, but not hold above 1300, as I said. Was the key level. Gold heads for its busiest trading day ever after Trump's win. That's a typical geopolitical proxy. Crude oil, $45.90 in New York. Have a look at the 5-day chart. That went down, then came back up. Lots of market superlatives, but nothing beats this. Coal prices have dropped only once in the last 70 sessions. Prices are up over 3 times. Iron ore prices continue to just go vertical in China. Gains from May now at 84%. Emerging markets, Tata Consultancy Services nominates Ishant Hussain as chairman to replace Cyrus Mistry. That's a big job in India. Sub-Saharan Africa, the president has shown himself more than willing to rule in defiance of popular opinion and to smash expressions of discontent. This is from African Arguments. Indeed, to cling to power, Kabila will need to deploy ever more dishonest and violent means. Research conducted by the Congo Research Group and the Bureau d'études de recherche et de consulting international highlights the absurdity of such statements. 7,545 people were polled throughout the DRC and asked for whom they would vote if elections were held this year. Fewer than 8% gave Kabila as their answer. Only 15.8% of respondents nationwide were in favor of a constitutional amendment which would allow Kabila to seek a third term, and 74.3% thought he should step down on 19th December. Blackening the gloom still further for the ruling alliance, none of the politicians from Kabila's majority, most commonly presented as potential successors, scored higher than 3%. Have a look at this picture of President Kabila in Rwanda with President Kagame. That was in August. And take you back to something I wrote in May 2015, which was relevant for Kabila. I think there is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. This is applicable to Ethiopia as well at the moment. I was writing about Ouagadougou's signal to Sub-Saharan Africa, concluded that we need to ask ourselves how many people can an incumbent shoot stone cold dead in such a situation? 100, 1,000, 10,000. And I said, this is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. And then I like that quote from Speeding Politics by Paul Virilio. The revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. South African all shares up 0.56% this year, dollar versus rand, last trading at 13.43, holding its own as Gordon seems to have bested President Zuma. Egyptian EGX30 up 21.2% over 4 weeks, up 45.95% this year, but obviously we're taking a big hit on the devaluation. Nigeria's population reached 182 million this year, with more than half its people under 30 years of age. The latest estimate is based on the population of 140 million recorded in the last census a decade ago, using an annual growth rate of 3.5%, weighed against other variables such as rising life expectancy and a declining infant mortality rate. Growing youth bulge, with those under 14 years accounting for more than 40% of its citizens. And I concluded by saying, is this a dividend or a terminator? Take you back to Ouagadougou in 2014. I said, what's clear is that a very young, very informed, very connected African youth demographic. Many characterize this as a demographic dividend, but for beautiful Blaise Compaoré, it turned into a demographic terminator. And I said it's set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and the rebalancing has begun. Nigeria, all shares down 8.62% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 14.96% this year. Africa is the core of Stanchard's franchise, and Stanchard CEO Bill Winters at a function I attended last night. They do throw a good function. The new incoming chairman, Jose Vinales, last night, there are opportunities in this increasingly complex world, he's right. And Sunil Kochhar cited Standard Chartered Kenya as being a strong performer. Standard Chartered Kenya is the only banking share price that's up year to date. It's up 17.84% when you take into account the dividend stream. Trades on a trading PE of 9.6. And it's a very solid franchise. I wrote a piece about Standard Chartered PLC and Standard Chartered Kenya, and I said Standard Chartered PLC is the parent of Standard Chartered Kenya. It has been a torrid period for bank stocks, particularly in Europe, where venerable banks such as Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse have plummeted to an all-time low. Negative interest rates have crushed spreads, coupled with higher regulatory capital requirements, and made this period one of the worst for shareholders. Stanchard PLC, however, has been an outlier. Malcolm Gladwell's book, he speaks of outliers as those who operate at the extreme outer edge of what is statistically possible. Standard Chartered has returned, and you have to account for a 1 for 10 bonus, the final dividend of the 6 shilling interim dividend announced last week. It was up 29% when I was writing that, but as I just said, we're up 17.84% year to date. Nairobi All-Share index is down 4.91%. We've been hanging around here for quite a while. The CBK boss, Patrick Njoroge, has asked for the prosecution of Family Bank over a 1.6 billion shilling NYS theft. He is relentless in going after various miscreants. Nairobi NSE 20 is down 19.85% this year. Thank you once again for stopping by.